Welcome to The New Left. I'd like to start out with a big thank you to our newest patrons, Peggy and Jacob. Thank you guys so much for your support. Today, I want to talk about Venezuela and the violent coup that is happening there right now that the United States is backing. It is important to know that the coup in Venezuela is not the first coup that the United States has backed and tried to overthrow the government with. Back in 2002, George W. Bush tried and failed at a coup in Venezuela that got 18 people killed and ultimately failed, and it was all designed to steal the country's oil. I think to understand what's really happening in Venezuela right now, we need to look back at history and another oil-rich country that tried to institute progressive policy and was ultimately overthrown by the United States, and that is Iran. Iran, back in the 1950s, was this progressive liberal country. They believed in things like women's rights and the separation of church and state. But Iran also wanted to own their oil themselves. A company named BP, British Petroleum, owned every last drop of oil in Iran. So the Iranians took the oil back for themselves. And Britain and the United States weren't having that. So the United States and Britain started a coup in Iran. They went into Iran and they bought up politicians and they hired street thugs and they started burning mosques and buildings and started a violent coup that overthrew the democracy in Iran. And who did they install? They installed a corrupt dictator named the Shah who gave away all of Iran's oil again, and 5 U.S. companies got a 40% share of Iran's oil and they kept it for 25 years. It wasn't until 25 years later that the Iranian people were able to shake off their oppressors, us, and they had to back the Islamic Revolution of 1979 to do it. Iran went from a progressive, liberal country that believed in women's rights to a theocracy that we are worried about a nuclear war with. And it's all because of us and our desire to steal their oil. And it's happening again in Venezuela today. Like Iran, Venezuela is also an oil-rich country. It has the largest oil reserves in the entire world. But like Iran, Venezuela is also a progressive country that wanted to take its oil wealth and give it back to the people. But as we know, the United States does not like it when you take the oil away from a dictator and give it away to the people. So, after the failed coup of 2002, Obama got his shot in 2013. In 2013, when Nicolas Maduro was elected to government, Obama started sanctioning the Venezuelan government. And it started as a couple sanctions against some rich people, and it spiraled into 19 different sanctions and 5 executive orders that were primarily designed to starve the Venezuelan people. The sanctions were designed to make sure that goods and money could not get back and forth across the border in Venezuela. At the same time, the United States and Saudi Arabia have been working to crash the price of oil. Right now, Saudi Arabia and the United States are losing billions of dollars every year producing oil because they're producing oil for less money than it costs them to produce it. Why are we losing this money? Because it is hurting Venezuela. Venezuela relies on its oil revenues in order to feed its people. And without oil money, they don't have money for food. And they especially don't have money for food if we sanction the country and wall them in so that they can't get food or money in or out of the country. So, Nicolas Maduro ends up being reelected in 2018. And it isn't until a year later almost, in January of 2019, that Juan Guaido of the National Assembly holds a press conference and declares himself the new president of Venezuela, despite the fact that he had never run for president before. Most Venezuelans don't have any idea who this Juan Guaido guy is. But, of course, the second this happened, the United States military-industrial complex gets a giant boner because they see Venezuela's oil as being a thing that they can take again. So Mike Pence goes online and puts out this crazy video urging the Venezuelan people to overthrow their own democracy. Check it out.
The United States supports the courageous decision by Juan Guaidó, the President of your National Assembly, to assert that body's constitutional powers, declare Maduro a usurper, and call for the establishment of a transitional government.
This entire thing is about taking Venezuela's oil. And if you don't believe me, listen to a senior Trump advisor, John Bolton himself, tell you that this entire coup in Venezuela is about taking Venezuela's oil.
Yeah, look, we're in conversation with major American companies now that are either in Venezuela or, in the case of Citgo, here in the United States. I think we're trying to get to the same end result here. You know, Venezuela is one of the three countries I call the troika of tyranny. It'll make a big difference to the United States economically if we could have American oil companies really invest in and produce the oil capabilities in Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of the United States. We both have a lot at stake here, making this come out the right way.
If that is not enough for you, listen to Donald Trump himself tell you that the entire point of a regime change war is to take another country's oil.
We should then say, by the way, from all of your oil, we want reimbursement. We should have said, we'll help you, but we want 50% of your oil. They would have absolutely said, okay, 100%. In fact, they would have said, how about 75%? So, and isn't it sad? We could have had anything we wanted. We could have had 50% of those oil fields. You know, in the old days, when you had a war, it's to the victor belong the spoils.
Please don't tell me that we are trying to kill people in Venezuela right now because we are worried about some humanitarian crisis. We are the ones causing a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. We are trying to starve the people out so that the government collapses. If we actually gave a shit about a humanitarian crisis in the world, we would be looking at Haiti and Yemen right now. Right now in Yemen, there are 12 million people on the edge of death because we are starving them, and there are already 85,000 children that have died and starved to death. Last year, we bombed a school bus full of children. This is Amal Hussein. She is a 7-year-old girl in Yemen who is one of the 85,000 children we have murdered. The United States does not care about a humanitarian crisis in the world because the United States is the humanitarian crisis. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to click like and subscribe. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider supporting the show on Patreon or donating.